Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now March 23rd of 2025, and given that the box office results are looking quite abysmal for the Walt Disney Company in regards to Snow White 2025, starring both Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, there's a lot of issues going on with this film, not just limited to Rachel Zegler's past comments and the portrayal of Snow White that she actually illustrates in this movie that just does not resonate with the audiences out there, but this in isolation, apart from all the agendas by the Disney Company, it's just a pure bad movie across the board. The writing, the acting, the producing, everything just falls flat. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So one thing about Snow White is that we already know that there's a lot of problems going into this movie, not just limited to, like I said before, the box office results, but the word of mouth is just not working for the Disney Company at all. Now we already know that we have those out there like Rachel Zegler that are on the damage control train. They are going to do whatever it takes to prop up this movie, to really make this movie come across a lot better than what it really is, and to also really kind of just drag the overall backlash away from anybody's attention out there. They're trying to distract everybody when it comes down to that front. Now this is where it gets interesting, because we know that those like Bob Iger, those like Rachel Zegler have been hopping on the damage control train, and what I mean by that specifically is that they will say whatever they have to say, they will lie about whatever they have to lie about in regards to this movie to convince those to come into the movie theaters to watch it and to give it a chance. Now again, what's interesting here is that with the Walt Disney Company, of course, still dealing with the Snow White backlash at unexpected levels from their own trusted critics, one major development going on now involves more to do with Rachel Zegler in the midst of all the drama surrounding Snow White. Now, Rachel recently delivered the following in the form of a response to the critics and to hop on damage control for the film. We knew going into this, and I should really say I knew going into this, that we couldn't really focus on the traditional prince and princess love story. We just couldn't do that again like how it was done in 1937. So one thing that Mark Webb, Greta Gerwig, and Erin wanted to do with how could we improve in the values of a woman and what it means to be a powerful female leader in this project, we all agreed that it was the best path to go by turning the prince into this bandit-type character, you know, who is this sort of a thief that steals things, a Robin Hood type of character, an outlaw. It's something I knew Disney wanted to do for a very long time, and it was the best way to really just illuminate female representation instead for this film, and I think for far too long we have all seen way too many roles taking up the limelight in these stories, focusing on Disney princesses. This was our best shot at flipping everything upside down, and for the better, and of course we knew we were going to get critics from loud, ruthless people out there that don't understand that this is just a movie. It has nothing to do with any sort of ideology or anything, but rather, this is a great educational piece on what it means to be a woman, and just how powerful one can be without the help of a prince, in the traditional sense in this fairy tale. I think that we provided a better sense of realism with this movie by turning the prince into a bandit-esque character. It's what needed to be done to really sort of fit the story of a modern woman, and for them to relate to Snow White better. I mean, we just had to go back and change some of that source material. Everything was just so dated since 1937, and of course, you are always going to get naysayers that will label these efforts as some kind of a message, but that's just coming from a false narrative on the right, for sure. I mean, that's just how it is. Anyone who has an issue with this film, I think it's safe to realize and say that they are politically motivated critics. Now guys, again, Rachel Zegler getting political when it comes to Snow White is not a big shocker here. She did this before in the past multiple times when it came to the marketing campaign for Snow White in the earlier months of, 2024. You guys may recall way back when they were still working on this movie, trying to patch it together, trying to really bring it back into, the sense where they had no trouble with the movie at all. This was before all 7 test screenings, which by the way failed miserably one after the other. Hence why you have a lot of critics that Disney once trusted that are just bashing this movie and calling it out for what it really is. So that's the overall reality of this situation right now, is that not only do you have Zegler admitting that she was fully on board and that she actually participated with Mark Webb, Greta Gerwig, Erin, etc., to really just devalue the prince character into this bandit, this thief, this outlaw, whatever have you, who's stealing and robbing things and doing all these things before he actually finds some kind of redemption or some kind of path. It really is the typical Disney messaging, there's no doubt about that, by devaluing the male character in the traditional sense, right? We always know that going into these movies, whether it's, Snow White or Cinderella or anything out there, right, that's Disney related, the typical thing is the prince and the princess. I mean, that's what you always see, right? And so to draw away from the whole character being a prince, it just goes to show you how far Disney was willing to go, how far those like Rachel, Greta, Aaron, Mark were all willing to go with this story to really just devalue any male character in this film. I mean, that's just a given fact. That's basically what she's admitting without actually saying it word for word. Now, moving onwards, she goes on to conclude, I think almost all critics now are politically motivated under what we have to deal with now for a couple of years. But yeah, source material is something that should never matter. It was time to get past the times of the prince saving the female-centric character, and we thought it turned out great by making this character into a bandit because it gives him growth. So guys, there's another excuse. They wanted to make him a bandit to give the character growth. I don't really understand anything from that, and she's going to talk about that in just a second, but I think it's nothing more than another excuse to just bring down the male character to a lower status in a typical Disney movie, and to basically just use that as a way to prop up the female-centric character. So much for equality, right, that Disney always goes on about. So much for, being very fair and balanced to all the characters. That's exactly why it's little things like this that this movie is just getting a lot of criticism, and yeah, typically that is something that would upset a lot of Disney fans, quote-unquote. That's why Disney fans are actually outright rejecting this movie. That's just one of the reasons, by the way, because it does break away from source material. Not only did they change the meaning of her name, Snow White, because she was actually one that survived the blizzard, but you have the fact that there's no prince in the movie, you have the fact that the CGI dwarves just look freakishly and nightmarish in design, that it's just really going to scare young audiences away. And I think it's just the beginning. Those things are just the beginning of the reasons as to why this is just not resonating at all with the audience. She goes on to end by stating, I don't expect any males to really understand that, here you go, so easily, because this is a film that it would like to call an art piece and just masterful storytelling, and it's going to resonate with so many young people regardless of the false reviews and phony critics floating around out there. So again, Rachel Zegler saying that males will never understand why we had to basically devalue the character Jonathan, who's not a prince in the film. He's a bandit, he's an outlaw, a thief. All of the above is the best way to describe the character. Not that he's necessarily a villain, but they really wanted to bring him to that lower status on purpose, right? Basically a way to kind of give a boost to Rachel Zegler's Snow White. And like I said before, it's a very good point. So much for equality when it comes to Disney. They always go on about equality and how important it really is. This is the best example of how hypocritical Bob Iger truly is, how hypocritical the executives are, how hypocritical many of the creatives behind Snow White truly are when it comes down to the storytelling. But I would like to hear what everyone has to say about all of this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.